Hello, welcome to Cask Theology, a channel about theology and beer, and today we're going to be looking at one of the old school beers, a beer that was around before all the popular kids got popular. That's right, today we're looking at the brown ale. So, as with other episodes in this series, we're going to take a quick look at what brown ale it is and a bit of its history, and then we're going to go and look at a few examples. So, as always, if you have your drink, let's ask the question, what is brown ale? Well, as the name implies, a brown ale is an ale that is, well, it's brown. Now, many of the ales that were around before the advent of the many popular styles that we see today were most likely some sort of brown ale. However, when mild, porter and IPA came along, as well as lager and their new ways of making beer on an industrial scale, the brown ale of yesteryear faded into history, but like most popular styles, it just wouldn't stay dead. Brown ale resurfaced in the early 20th century, although the recipe had been altered. This wasn't the same stuff as the beers from the 1700s, as it used different malts, but it did become popular in its own right and was often used in beery concoctions such as brown and mild, which I'm sure you can guess the ingredients of. Brown ale's return to the pubs and clubs of the UK didn't last past the 20th century, however, as towards the approach of the millennium its popularity began to fade, much like mild and pale ale did, as lagers and ciders began to dominate the market. But as beers never truly die out, it's still around today with a few well-known brands of it available. Now this, of course, is the story of brown ale in the UK, but overseas it can still be found in places such as Belgium and the USA. Now their style of this beer is slightly different to the English style of beer because it's down to their citrusy American hops. Well, as always, we've done a little bit of the history and we kind of know what brown ale is, but there's nothing like a bit of first-hand experience. So, let's go grab some brown ales and see some examples of them. Well, hello! Welcome to my new set. Yes, we are out of the kitchen. As you can tell, there's a lot less echo in this room. Kitchen was lovely, but the lighting wasn't amazing, and of course there was that echo. My kitchen is very small, so which was causing a lot of the problems with the sound. So I thought I'd try a new set and see how we get on with some new lighting. So let's crack on. I've got two brown ales to show off today from two of the most iconic brown ale creators in the UK. So the first one I've gone for is the OG brown ale, the very first. Let's get a glass in there because we're going to get this poured. The first brown ale that I'm going to show off today is Man's Brown. Now, Man's Brown was the resurgence of brown ale back in 1902, as it says on my bottle there. Now, of course, this isn't the same stuff as the stuff from the 1700s when it sort of died out with the introduction of IPAs and milds and things. It is slightly different recipe, but this one is iconic because it's the most long-running brown ale that you can get today. You can still buy it. I bought this from a supermarket in Morrison's. I don't know if you might be able to order it online from somewhere, but it's still going. It's not owned by Man's anymore. It's owned by Marston's, who make things like Bombardier, so it's owned by one of the big companies, but you can still get it grand. So, as always, quick note about the ABVs. Can't see it up there because it's teeny tiny. You might be able to see it here. It's 2.8%, so it's actually a very easygoing beer. Very easygoing, and it was often used in mixers. Now, I've mentioned these mixers before and these beer cocktails, and it was often used in brown and mild, which I can kind of guess that you're going to guess what they are. It was half of mild and a bottle of Man's Brown, which are often mixed together to create a new kind of flavour. One day, yeah, I think one day I will do a beer cocktail episode. I'll definitely need to do that on a day off, I think. So, without further ado, let's get this Man's Brown poured. Oh, there you go. Now, couple of tasting notes. Mans Brown's often kept at room temperature rather than in the fridge. So let's get some Mans Brown going, and we can see immediately what it looks like. Oh, look at that. Oh, there we go. Mans Brown. Now, this is on one end of the brown ale spectrum. Let's get this right in the middle there so you can see it. It's got a dark colour, a lot like mild. Now let's see if I can't bring it up to the light so you can see. Definite dark colour there. Apologies for me camera, it's just on my phone. I haven't got a professional camera. But yeah, as you can see, the colour is very much like mild. Very dark, almost porter-like in that way. But it has got a taste difference. It's a bit sweeter than mild. In fact, shall we? Yes, let's go for it. Yes. So it's a lot less intense than mild, and it's very easy going. Very easy going. That's because of that 2.8%. It's not very bitter. It's very easy going. It's not like a porter. It's not heavy, so it won't sit on the stomach. And like say a porter or mild. Really cracking ale actually. Very sessional as well at 2.8. Sessional, of course, meaning that you can have one or two and you'll be okay. It's not going to knock you about. So that's one end of the spectrum, but now we want to go to the other end of the spectrum. Now, in the last episode, I asked you to look up what a Geordie was. And you were probably wondering, Matt, why are you asking what a Geordie is? Well, with this next beer, we're going to go find out. So let's do that now. So, Geordies then. What is a Geordie? Well, England, it's a small country, but we've got a lot of history. And there are a lot of accents and dialects all over the place. In fact, it goes as deep as people from different cities can sound different to each other. There's a lot of regional accents, a lot of regional dialects. Let's go through a couple actually. The Birmingham accent, or the Brummies, they hail from, of course, Birmingham. Most famous son of Birmingham is probably Ozzy Osbourne. So if you ever watched Ozzy Osbourne on one of his shows or listened to an interview of him, that's an example of a Birmingham accent. Sean Bean, that northern actor from Sheffield, that is an example of a Yorkshireman's accent. And Geordies, well, Geordies hail from the city of Newcastle, and they have their own distinct accent and their own dialect. So, with that in mind, we're going to look at the next iconic UK brown ale, which is Newcastle Brown Ale, hailing originally from the city of Newcastle, the home of the Geordies. Now, Geordies, they loved this stuff, and they used to nickname it a bottle of dog, including the phrase, which you can read on the back. It was affectionately known as dog by those in the know because they were ganning to see a man about a dog. Or for folks who aren't Geordies, I'm going to go see a man about a dog, which became a phrase synonymous with I'm going up the pub. And 9 times out of 10 they go and drink a Newcastle Brown Ale. So, tasting notes before we get cracking. This one's a bit stronger than the man's at 4.7. Can hardly read that there. Maybe you can see it on there. Don't know. Camera might not be good enough. Other tasting notes as well is the serving temperature. Now, with the Mans Brown, I said it was mostly served at room temperature, but the Nuki Brown, they recommend you serve it cold, and they've got this little blue star on the back there, and the bluer that is, the colder the beer. And when that turns blue, it says it turns blue, starts to turn blue at 12 degrees C. Nice little bit of technology there to tell you that your beer is cold enough to drink. So, another tasting note as well is that traditionally Newcastle Brown Ale was served in a half glass. I don't know why that is, but it's the way it's been. Always, whenever I sold one of these, people asked it to be in a half glass. So, without further ado, let's crack this open and have a look at another iconic UK brown ale. In we go. Oh, let's do a bit of compare and contrast. Lovely. Now, it's quite obvious that that is different to that. This one is a lot paler. If I bring it up to the camera and the light, you can see through it, actually. You can actually see the brown notes in there. And you can tell it's a brown ale. Flavour-wise, this one is a lot sweeter. It tastes very, very sweet, as opposed to that one. You can certainly taste a lot more of the sweetness that comes with Newcastle Brown Ale. So there we have it. There we've got the gamut of brown ale. As you can see, like pale ale, it goes from very dark to quite pale, but it's definitely brown, and it's an ale. Other notable brown ales that you can find out and about. There's another one from Sam Smith's brewery, which, let's just pop these to the side. There you go. Sam Smith's do a brown ale. I'll pop a thing here. And if you're outside of the UK and you're in the US, the Brooklyn Brewery do a brown ale as well. Although theirs tastes a lot different from the UK brown ales because they branched off into a different style, used their American hops in the mix. So it does taste different to these ones, but it's still worth a go. Now, of course, brown ale, it declined in popularity over the years. It went the way of mild and kind of pale ales back in the late 80s, early 90s. It saw a downturn basically because a lot of people were getting into lagers and ciders. Yeah, you can't find brown ale an awful lot nowadays. Part of that, of course, is because of rebranding. Brown ale, like pale ale, is a bit of a wide spectrum, a wide gamut. So, talking about the Marston's guys earlier that made Bombardier, they've rebranded Bombardier from a pale ale to what's called an amber ale. And they've done that for marketing reasons. It's exactly the same stuff, but instead of having it marketed as a pale ale or a bitter, they've tried to attract a different crowd by calling it an amber ale. But this stuff, it does exactly what it says. It's brown, it's an ale. And this is one of the most iconic ones. Now, Newcastle Brown Ale, there is a bit of history behind these guys. It was originally brewed by Scottish Newcastle Brewery way back in the day. And they even applied to get brown ale identified, similar to champagne, in that you can't call it a Newcastle Brown Ale unless it's from Newcastle. And they did kind of win that appeal. But sadly, they eventually got sold. The company got sold to Heineken, a Dutch company, who moved production from Newcastle to Tadcaster, which is in North Yorkshire. So, sadly, the name is in name only. It's not brewed in Newcastle, but it's still pretty good. A lot of folks have told me over the years that it doesn't taste like it used to, and that's obviously down to a move in production. Water is a big part of beer, and one of the reasons they wanted to sort of patent the Newcastle brand was because the water in Newcastle is Newcastle water. It's not the same as the water from Tadcaster. And that's why a lot of brewers went to Burton-on-Trent, such as Marston's, who are from Burton-on-Trent, because of the water there. But anyway, that is your brief look at brown ales. Let's just line them up there so you can see them. So that is a brown ale. So now you should be able to tell what a brown ale is, and I'd encourage you to go and have a look for one. But wait, there's more before you run off. Yes, so while I'm asking you to do all the YouTuber things like, share and subscribe, let's have a look at Northbridge Brown Ale. Northbridge, I mean, honestly, it's it's quite obvious the inspiration for this beer. Oh, this is from Harper's Brewing Company. You can get this from Aldi, which is, I believe, where I got it from. 4.7%. Again, I've done this one chilled. You can get this from Aldi. a lot of supermarkets do these kind of similar but not quite brews, and as you can tell, oh, that one is a copy of Newcastle Brown. Let's have a quick swizz. In fact, they have actually made a beer that's different to Newcastle Brown Ale. Newcastle Brown Ale is very sweet. This one's got a lot less sweetness in it, so it's definitely worth a look if you're in an Aldi in the UK. So there we have it. We've got some brown ales on there. As always, like, share, subscribe and all that good stuff. If you want some more theology and beer content, yeah, come for the beer, stay for theology, or come for theology, have a beer, whichever. So I hope you enjoyed that brief look into brown ales. Next time we're looking at an ale known as lambic, which is one I've never tried before, so that's going to be a learning experience for us both. That's one of the big ales for the craft ale crowd. They love it. Lovely, man's brown. So yeah, be sure to tune in on the 28th of next month for a look at lambic. That's going to be really exciting. I'm excited. I hope you're excited. If you've got any suggestions for a brown ale that you might have tried that I haven't mentioned, please do leave a comment. Or if you learned something, leave a comment. Or drop a like, whatever. It all helps the channel. So until next time, as always, grab your drink and ask another question. Ooh. And on the 15th, if you fancy learning some theology, turn up on the 15th. If not, 28th, and we'll learn about lambic. Until then, thanks for watching.